is James Overton. I'm sure most of you know that. This is my son, James, also James Overton, James Overton Jr., Jimmy Overton. He'll be assisting me and probably teaching some of the techniques that we'll be demonstrating, and certainly going around helping you guys. Jimmy has an invaluable degree of experience in grappling competition, judo and wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So having him here is a great asset to our seminar, and certainly brings me a lot of pride. I'm wearing black, he's wearing white, just so things show up a little better on the tape, which will, as I stated in the seminar description, will be available to all of you for a nominal fee. Okay, so let's get started. The first series of techniques might surprise you, especially if you've had some. I know some of you have had some judo backgrounds. So it might surprise you as to one, going into these particular type of techniques, you're not going to see the actual turning and hip loading and throwing techniques until a little later. The reason for that is, despite the fact that we're wearing a gi, a lot of our techniques are geared towards grappling in general. So a lot of the techniques we're going to be teaching are going to be techniques that can be employed with a uniform, with a gi, with some kind of garment, as well as without garments. And right now, when I teach introductory grappling here in class, or whenever I taught it, one of the first techniques that I've taught has always been the double leg takedown. It's called in judo Overton-Guerra, or to mean double Gary meaning reap. Right? But before we get to that, I want to start you guys off with some drills pertaining to the subtle technique of shoots. Okay? You see a lot of people, when they want to execute this technique or any kind of pickup technique, they bend at the waist and they charge forward. Okay? We're not going to do that here. We don't like that. All right? You'll see later when we do the counter to the double leg, to the Overton-Guerra, you'll see why. When you actually bend at the waist, it's much easier to counter you than if you do it properly. So we're going to focus on the proper execution of a shoot. And that, I'm going to exaggerate the motion a little bit, because in the execution during a combat situation, it's a little bit more fluid. But I want you to focus on, first of all, my stance. Okay, the weight of my feet, the weight of my body are on the balls of my feet. Back heel is up. Okay, notice the back heel is up off the mat, because that's what's going to propel me forward. First thing I'm going to do is drop my level. Okay, so it's just like a fighting stance, but I drop my level, and from here I spring forward. I spring forward and I bring my back leg with me. I don't do this, because then I have no drive. Right? I need to bring my back leg with me so that I actually can engage it either in the combined motion of lifting as well as pushing my opponent forward, or the action, the rotation of the sphere. I'm going to talk a lot about spheres rotating here. Okay, so first of all, what you're going to do is, with your partners, you're going to start by dropping your level and just shooting forward and back. So switch, okay, back and forth, dropping, back here, drop, here. You notice how I'm inserting. Okay, there'll be other times when we're inserting on the outside, right? But the main principles are the same. We drop our level, we try to minimize bending at the waist by dropping here, knees, and coming in. Okay, so back and forth, once again, in, out, in, out, changing leads, in, out. Okay, so let's cut. Okay, good job everyone, good job. Now we're going to continue with the next part of this drill. You're actually going to be taking somebody down. Now when we're done filming, you can come up and use a crash pad here to get some people on that side. We also, as you can see, have a crash pad down there. So, and you actually, for this part, what we're going to do, you don't really need the crash pad, so you can use the matted areas. But later you're definitely going to need them. So here, you've dropped down, okay, you've inserted, right? Now from here, this is what's called the Gary part of the technique. In other words, the reaping part. Okay? From this position where I've inserted nicely and deeply, I'm pushing with my shoulder and I'm going to scoop with my hands. And notice I'm not grabbing the garment. It can be effective if you get a nice hole, when a person has nice baggy pants for you to grip, but it's not something, even in a garment-oriented art like judo, it's not something that you really want to rely on. You want to grab them behind the person's knees. Okay? Cup your hands behind their knees. Okay? Pushing with your shoulder and your head. And watch this. I'm going to do this rather slowly, but here it is. Okay? Bang. Right? Actually, I did it with a little bit of lift. If you can just do it straight in, like just kind of pushing and tossing. Right? Now, what are the principles behind this movement? For certainly the vast majority of your stand-up grappling techniques, and also the ones on the ground, with the exception of, there are some exceptions, but for most of your techniques, you're looking at a dynamic sphere. Okay? Grappling cannot take place, unlike Thai boxing or boxing, grappling cannot take place when the two bodies are separated at a distance. Okay? Grappling takes place when the two bodies combine into one. Right? First thing. Second thing, in order to use any degree of technique, you have to rotate these bodies that are now connected to one as a sphere rotating. So from here, following on this technique that we're building on, I insert, I'm here, okay, now we're one body. Okay, as I'm going to rotate them as a sphere. Okay, this is the axis of rotation of this sphere. Okay, I'm pushing it this way and then scooping this way. So for an instant, both of us are actually rotating. You will see that I'm not static here. I'm actually pushing, right? Okay, I insert, I'm here, bang. Okay, I'm actually pushing and pulling. So both of us are actually rotating along the combined axis of rotation of our bodies in one sphere. Then I disengage. Or I could continue passing the guard, or engaging in a leg lock, or something of that nature, if I wished, or just stomping this private, depending on what the encounter is all about. Okay? So, always keep in mind the sphere. Look for the sphere. Okay? The two bodies rotate. Alright, so this is what you're going to practice. Practice from here, just inserting, dropping, here, picking up just a little bit. This is not a power move. Okay? Just a little bit, but it's more of a bang. Okay? That quick rotation. And then disengage. Stay upright. Okay? From here you have options. Afterwards, we're going to practice this related technique in which we're not caught between the opponent's so-called guard. Okay? Not that this is a tremendous problem. Again, I can do leg lock. I can stop depending on what's the nature of the, what are the rules. It's a street fight, bang, ends pretty quickly. Okay? So let's work on that. Okay guys, looking good, looking good. Alright, let's build on this. Now, what I did before was I just, from here, you notice I didn't really get much elevation. Okay? It didn't really get much elevation. I popped the sphere up a little bit by lifting, and then I just kind of tugged and pushed, rotating like this. But we want to cause a little bit more damage to our opponent. Okay? At least we want to have that option. So from here, okay, from here I'm going to insert, and from here I'm going to pick up. Now again, this is not a power move, despite the fact that it seems that way. Okay? I usually bring my daughter 110 pounds to pick me up 200 pounds to demonstrate this, but she's on camera right now. So that's not gonna work. But trust me on this. Okay, you'll realize this when you actually practice and have the smaller people pick up the larger people by maintaining my back straight. I lift with my legs. Okay? Now from here are your options. From here you can be pleasant and docile, dump your opponent. This, you can be less pleasant and far less docile, and actually jump up and crash down on your opponent, which is was my favorite way of dealing with this in competition. You actually drive from here, you drive your sternum into your opponent's, your shoulder into your opponent's sternum on the way down. This is a very effective street technique in that, on the street you don't have nice crash mat, landing pad, so you just make your opponent into your landing pad. Just boom, land on. However, in training, you're probably not going to make many friends doing this on a regular basis. So I strongly suggest that you just practice picking up, okay, and just dropping. Just practice the pickup. In fact, for a drill, what I'd like you to do is, the person reaches, you reach, you're going to parry their hands. Okay, so this can be done. This can be done at the beginning of an encounter. Someone tries to grab you. You parry their hands. You pick up. Okay, you just put them down. Right? Or the person can be reaching for a bell, parry up, pick up, and drop. Okay, we'll be working on variations of that. All right, let's get busy. Okay, now we're going to work on a variation of this technique, in which you're actually going to have to use the crash pads a little bit. Okay, because I want you to experience what it's like to dump your opponent a little bit. You always have the option of landing on your opponent in a grappling situation in order to close the gap and immediately transition into groundwork, or you can just dump them and move away, run away, or engage other opponents if you have to. The idea that some people have that grappling is limited to groundwork, or is primarily groundwork, is a fallacy. Okay? One of the things I want to do is change everyone's minds about this, and understand that grappling involves as much stand-up work and throwing and not being thrown as mat work or a ground fight. Okay, so here's a variation. Okay, so I'm here, I've dropped, I've inserted, I pick up, but this time, rather than spreading his legs and tossing him this way, what I'm going to do is clear his legs and toss him. So it's a rotation. Okay, here, bang, up. Now see, I rotate him like this to the side. Now from here, I could fall on him, just the same, or just pleasantly dump him. Now what I've accomplished here is, let's rotate. Okay, what I've accomplished, actually, let me just do it on the map. What I've accomplished is I've cleared his guard, okay, at the same time as I've lifted him. So I've actually transitioned into a more favorable position to continue on the ground by employing this kind of switch. I call it a yoko Overton-Guerra, side Overton-Guerra. So I'm here, bang, shot, I'm up, bang. I've just gone down lightly to avoid hanging on my partner, but now here I'm ready for groundwork. Okay, so grab the crash mat. You can come up here, use this one, take turns, but experience that. And notice, I know a lot of you are already pointing this out, that with your back straight, lifting with your legs, you can, your opponent feels a lot lighter than if you bend at the back. Hey, technique. Let's go. Okay, so we've taught you an offensive technique. Now we're going to teach you a counter, or a defensive. We're going to go to a few counters against this movement. The first one we're going to work on is what's known as the sprawl. Okay. Now here we're going to emphasize why it's so important to not bend at the waist and shoot in. Why it's so important to keep your back relatively erect as you make your entry, dropping your level. Okay, well first let me demonstrate what the sprawl is all about. right? I'm here, I'm just standing, he shoots in, go ahead, just do it properly. Just gonna show you. He shoots in, I move my legs back out of the way, I put pressure on him, I try to get my hips out, okay? Basic maneuver. We're going to elaborate on that a little bit more. Okay. Watch what happens if he bends his back. Right? He's just going to bend his back. Okay. Not only do I need to sprawl less, but in this kind of action, okay, it's much easier to counter him. You know, with the choke, the guillotine here, okay, so many counters I can do. Right? Much easier to counter him. Same amount of motion, he's going to shoot in with his leg properly. Watch what happens. If I don't sprawl enough, he catches me. Okay. Bring your hips forward. Okay. Notice how much closer he is. Now bring your hips way back and bend at the waist. Okay. The distance between his hips and my center of gravity marks the degree to which he doesn't have control. Let me rephrase that. The closer his hips are to my center of gravity, the more control and penetration he has with this technique. Right? I have to, in order to defend from this, I have to sprawl much further to get away from his arms. Okay? Another reason, as Jimmy was mentioning earlier to some of you, is that when people bend their backs, they tend to shoot their arms wide. Now watch what happens if he shoots his arms wide, bending my side. Okay? I can catch him here. Now from here, okay, watch this count. I'm going to do this slowly because it involves a neck lock. Right? From here, I turn, I bring him down, and his neck is locked out. Okay? Let me rotate it over. Okay? Here, his neck is locked out. Being very careful because it's very pleasant. Again, see this from a different angle. If he bends at the waist, arms tend to shoot out. It's much easier to defend this way. So I'm here, he shoots out, bang, I catch him here. All right? From here, his own momentum forward is actually going to help me take him down. Push forward, and rotate. You come down carefully, okay? Pressure on the neck. Okay? So, a couple reasons why it's important to drop your level and shoot. Okay, so we've explained that. Let's go over some of the details of the sprawl. He shoots in. He shoots in. Okay, I need to get my butt out of dodge. I need to get my hips as far away as possible from his hips, from his center of gravity, from his power area. Okay, in order to keep two bodies rather than one colliding into one sphere. I need to shoot my legs out at angles. What this does, let's do it again. Okay, so I'm here. Okay, what this does is it increases the distance through which his hands have to travel in order to try to grab my legs. Right now he's got to extend his arms out. He has less power to be able to pull me in. Okay. So two things, get my hips out of the way, kick my legs out. Third thing that's very important, shoot again, okay, is fall on him, right? I want to make this almost as a counterattack. My dropping of my chest on his back helps block his momentum forward, right? Leaving him in a more vulnerable position. Okay, comments? Okay, so what we're going to do is, this is how I always emphasize to my students how to practice this. What you're going to do is you're going to stand right in front. Your opponent is going to be in a position ready to shoot, nice and crouched. Okay, you're going to have your hands up. All right. Actually, let's start off with your hands on your waist. Right? Let's not get too cocky. All right. So your hands are going to be down. Your opponent's going to shoot, and you're going to sprawl. Go ahead. Okay, and down. Bang. Okay, get your hips out of the way, pull on your opponent, kick your legs back. When you get a little bit better at this, hands up, here, I'm coming closer, Go ahead, shoot, boom. Okay, and down. Of course, I'm not completely out of danger here, because what he's about to do is spin this way, right? Come out like this, but then I'm a lot better off than I would have been had he taught me, believe me. Okay? Alright guys, let's do this. Okay guys, we're back to do this. We're going to do another defensive maneuver. It's not really a counter, but it's a defensive maneuver against the shoot. And Jimmy's going to demonstrate this one. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to shoot, bring him up, okay, and he's going to pivot and turn on his hands to escape the maneuver. Now, let me just talk a little bit about this, then we're going to do it a little bit more fluidly. Right. First thing is, as I pick him up, my intention is to slam him on his back. Right? Now, there is a possibility, well, there's a split instant in which he's, by landing on his hands, his back is to me. But it's kind of a trade-off. Would you rather have your back and perhaps the back of your head hit the pavement? Or would you rather try to spin out, plant your hands, and then rotate as he did? I mean, that's, I think it's a, you know, it's, once you're up in the air, your options are rather limited. So this is better, in my opinion, than getting the back of my head or my back slammed into the pavement. So, okay, so I'm here, boom, shoot him up, and he's down. Escapes. Alright? Now there's some subtleties of this Jimmy's going to comment on. Okay?
Well, I guess there are 3 important points, but the 2 most important things would be creating space, like as he shoots in. I have to get my hips away, are the most important thing, but if he's too far in, leaning my back and turning should be enough. But if I get my hips out, it's a lot better. And the most important thing, I would say, the one most important thing, is when I land on the ground, to turn and face him as quickly as possible. So I'm landing on my hands and then spinning away because I don't want him on my back. And if he comes at me, I'm a lot better disposed to deal with whatever he's doing.
You're in a lot better position than you were an instant fraction of a second.
And the higher he lifts you, the harder it is to do. The farther he goes on with the technique, I guess is the easiest thing to say. So whichever leg, it's easiest probably if he's shooting in right side. If you can get this leg in, your left leg, in between his legs, it helps you.
Rotate that so they can see it back. Can you see that in the camera? Mm-hmm. So facing this way.
Yeah, as he shoots in. If I can get this leg in, it helps me create space, 1, and 2, it helps me turn out, and it stops him from lifting. Well, it doesn't stop him, but it makes it harder. It makes it a lot harder for him to lift. It's better to get the near leg in if he's shooting in right side. His lead leg, I want to trap his lead leg, but if I can't, this leg, well, get any leg you can in. But, so, first option, and the second option.
Okay, so you want to get a leg in, braced, your shin braced against the inside of my entry leg. Okay? Let's do that one more time from this angle. And notice that he's basically initiated his escape before I have a good handle on the pickup. Right? As he said, the higher he is up in the air, so let me just kind of pick you up. The higher he is up in the air, the more difficult this becomes. The more of an acrobat he actually has to be to keep from getting slammed on the mat. Okay? Alright, more comments?
Obviously, your first option is to sprawl, and this is, in most cases, the last ditch resort.
Okay, well, let's play with this a little bit, and then we've got some other options we're going to explore. Okay, let's get going. Okay, see, we all had fun with that. I know some of you were a little intimidated by the acrobatics that require a certain degree of feline agility. in order to perform. Let's do a little bit, let's do a couple of other things that some of us less acrobatically inclined can engage in. So from here, and again I'm going to emphasize some of the differences between when the opponent, your attacker, performs a proper shoot versus a football tackle. Okay, so this particular counter, now actually this is actually a counter to this move. So this particular counter in judo and Japanese is called sumigaeshi, or sumigaeshi, meaning corner counter. Okay, you'll see why in a moment. I'm going to teach this my style, which is a little bit different, and I may or may not elaborate on the differences between how I do it versus classical judo. So I'm here, minding my own business, and all of a sudden I get shot off. Okay, so here I'm going to do this slowly first, and then do it quickly. So give me poor form. All right, so this is a football tackle. In a bar or whatever situation, he charges, okay, and I barely get a chance to sprawl, all right? So from here, I'm going to bend my body on him. If I can, wrap my hands around, grab something, or even just hug his body. All right, let's move back. Let's go a little bit. Okay, so here, go ahead. So here, you shoot. Go ahead. Yeah. So go ahead, boom, from here. I'm going to, using his momentum, because he's still driving through to take me back, I'm going to sit down, okay, toss him over and roll. Again, we're one sphere, okay. All right, two bodies, you're going to be sick of hearing this, but two bodies become one sphere because he's entered into my space, grabbed onto me, and has a certain amount of angular momentum in his motion. Right? So he shoots him again, one more time, okay, bang, and over. Now on the mount, things change, bang, okay. Now, let me break this down. I should go a little faster. Okay. Doesn't really matter. The faster he comes in, it's like Joe Lewis said, the harder they come, the harder they fall. The faster he comes, the harder he's going to fall. Hence his reticence to actually train wreck into me. So, all right, couple things. He's going to shoot in. If I can, go ahead, just do a football tackle. If I can, I'm going to sprawl out a little bit. Always, right? Because it gives me a certain degree of control. Okay? And it should be instinctive. It should be instinctive to, as soon as someone's coming down there, to perform some degree of sprawling action. Now here's the case where I sprawl a little bit, he charges, I sprawl a little bit, and he's still coming through. Now notice where his leg is. Sorry, notice where my leg is, where his arm is. It's wrapped around this leg, okay? Now this leg, since he's pulling it forward, I'm just going to go with that motion. I'm going to insert this leg, I insert it on the inside of this thigh. Okay, classical judo would place it on the inside of this thigh. Okay, the reason why, just like there, I insert it on, you stand up, just keep your foot there. I insert it on the inside of this thigh is because when people tend to shoot, they tend to insert one leg, and there's a lead leg that enters, okay? So, and most often than not, it's the right leg, so we're in a kind of like right leg to right leg situation. It's a little easier for me to get this. That's one of the reasons. Another reason has to do with the rotation and where I wind up, and in case I mess up, I don't want my opponent on top of me and want it over to the side. I might illustrate that in a moment. So let's go back. He's doing a crappy shoot. He's doing a football tackle, okay, which makes my defense, my counter, a lot easier. I'll show you in a minute what happens when he does a proper shoot and how much more difficult it becomes. Still possible, but much more difficult. So again, he does a football tackle, over. Right, I can hold on to this, right, neck lock, and just simply sit in the mount. Okay, the motion that I'm using is simply, I can try to get a little bit of a sprawl, kind of stop the momentum, and so I can control the motion backwards, because maybe he's just coming too fast, right? And he might be just charging right through, coming a little too fast, and I don't have time to actually set myself physically and mentally for that roll. So I may want to like stop a little bit, but the motion is I sit down, and as I sit down, again, hugging his back, arms around his back. This leg shoots up on the inside of his corresponding thigh, right to right. Okay, and I sit back. I kick this out. At the same time, his own momentum, as I kick this out, his own momentum helps me come over into a dominant position. All right. One more time. Just go from this side. One more time. I'm trying to break it down. I break a little bit. This time, I caught his neck. Okay, my arm isn't around here. I caught his neck. Be careful with this when you practice. All right? That's why I'm pointing this out. Be very careful with this. Effective on the street, but what happens if I catch his neck? Instead of this, is as we come over, okay, see where his head winds up? Wrapped up through here. If I'm not careful, I'm not cautious, I follow through the momentum, okay, I can damage his neck on the way up. So, I'm pointing it out so that you are aware that it's an option. Don't do this by mistake and hurt your opponent, okay? We've all signed waivers, but this still is the state of California. All right, so again, one more time from this section. This angle up here, to drop. And I'm over. Okay, comments? No? All right. Okay, get busy. Okay, now as I mentioned earlier, you guys have practiced when your opponent has actually done football kind of tackle, bending at the waist, and all that ugly stuff. Right? Now we're going to practice, see what happens when your opponent does a proper shoot. So you stand in here, your opponent shoots, and then you're going to try to sprawl. Look at how much more difficult the situation becomes. Okay? Look how much more difficult the situation becomes. Here, you can still execute this technique, but you had better be quicker on your sprawl. All right? This is definitely a situation in which you have to sprawl in order to break his vertical stance. Okay, shoot. Okay, and he shoots. And I try to do this technique from here. I'm going to land on my back. There's no two ways about it. Okay? Versus bring your hips up. Okay, like this. Now I have enough room. Now I have enough room to sit down. And as I sit down, watch what happens to his body as I sit down and place myself. As I sit down, okay, he wants to roll forward. All right, stand up again. Okay, so bend at the waist, If he bends at the waist, like this, and I come in, again, we're one body, my dropping motion, what it does is it applies a certain degree of angular momentum into his body, okay? You both roll over. If he does a proper shoot, however, there's no room for that. There's no room for that. If I try to drop, I'm just helping him with the move. So what you have to do here, you definitely have to sprawl, right? Go ahead, shoot. You can still perform the technique, but you have to sprawl. Now that I've given myself a little bit of room, okay, and broken his stance a little bit, now I can do the technique. Okay, back over. Come over here, we go this way. Okay, let's just demonstrate it right quick. I want you guys to practice and see the difference and see how important it is to shoot properly. So go ahead. He shoots. I sprawl a little bit. I come down. Okay, and I'm over. All right, let's practice that. All right. Now, we do another technique. It's called Tawari Gaeshi, Tawari Gaesh. rice bag reversal. Rice bag reversal. Okay. This technique is very similar to the previous one, except for rather than shooting my leg up on the inside of your opponent's thigh, and again, in a classical sumigaeshi, you can go on this side. My style, I always go on this side. Let me just demonstrate why a little bit. Judo is very much a sport of grips, in the sense that grips is kind of a digression, but grips afford certain opportunities to enter into grappling techniques. Again, what I'm showing here now so far, there are really no grips involved, so it's not all about grips, but grips are important. So, for example, if I take what's called an obitori, a belt grip on the top, right here, okay, this is a very good position to execute the sumigaeshi, because from here, my foot is right, and this is why I do it this way, with my foot on the inside, as opposed to that side, because from here, see, my foot is already directly lined up with this inner thigh. So when I roll him, okay, I'm nice and neatly in position to execute the technique. So that's one of the reasons why I developed that particular way of doing this technique. Okay, now back to what I want to demonstrate. Tawargaeshi. Alright, so the opponent's going to shoot again, football tackle, then we're going to do proper shoot. Okay, so by now you should be sold on the difference. Okay, so he's going to football tackle. He comes in, I sprawl a little bit, but my foot's too far out. Okay, it'd be too awkward for me from here to try to get my foot on the inside. Right? So from here, I'm still going to follow the principle of a sphere. Two bodies that become one. Right? He's pushing forward. By dropping my hips, I'm imparting a certain degree of angular momentum. So he's going to spin. This time I'm just going to shoot my leg out and rotate him over my body. So I'm here. Now, from here, rather than go over top of him, I'm more in a side mount position. Notice where my arm is. I'm going to slide underneath the mount. I have control. If I want to slip into the mount, I'm here. See that again? On this side, okay, he tackles, and I'm here. Okay, comments? Okay, so, actually, let me just show this. What happens if the person does a proper shoot? He comes in, again, you had better sprawl. But you're actually in a little better position than trying to do this technique than the previous one. So do the Tawargaeshi rather than the sumigaeshi because of where your foot is on the outside. Okay? So even with a little bit of a sprawl, I can now spring into action, come over top, and slide for the control, transitioning into groundwork. Okay? Or a hold down. Okay, with the neck crank. Okay. Comments? No. Alright, let's get busy, guys. Okay, now we're gonna move on away from the double leg and the reversals. We're gonna move on to a technique that Tanitoshi valley drop. No, valley drop. That's correct. All right. The entry from this is stand facing me. Stay up straight. A little bit away from okay, the entry from this is, well, we're going to do it as an attack. It can also be done as a defensive maneuver, and I'm explaining both of them. So from here, what I'm going to do is the same kind of motion, drop my hips, bend the knees. Okay. This time I'm going to shoot to the side. Right? Now from here, there are people that do a double leg from here. So they pick up here, and then they sweep back. Right? So that's another, it's another variation on this entry. You can go in here, or you can just come around, pick up, and toss. Right? But from my perspective, once I'm over here, I have the advantage, a couple of advantages. Number one, I've outflanked my opponent. Number two, it's always important to have your hips lower than your opponent when you're going to execute the attack, right? Because with your hips lower than the opponent, you're the one that gets to drive which way, or have more influence in terms of which way the sphere is going to go. Now that's not always the case, because there are techniques that if I sit around in camp here, he can turn and do a Uchimata, and I'm going to go flying. Right, so I don't want to camp here. So again, I'm going to come in, I drop, instead of inserting inside, I'm going to come around here, okay? It doesn't really matter what I do with this arm over here. If I put it behind or in between, I will rotate in a minute. What I'm going to do is drop this leg behind both of his heels and take him down. Right? That's a little less explosive than it actually would be. Let's move over a little bit. Okay? Describing the mechanics of it, it's a rotation this way. Okay? So as I go over here, I come in to the side, and now I drop. And I'm up for a mount. Okay? Not a spectacular pickup technique, but effective nonetheless, getting your opponent to the ground and getting the upper hand. Now I said this can be done as a counter if I'm over here, okay, engaged, and he attempts to do a hip throw. Okay, go ahead, he rotates. Okay, I move with him and block his rotation, or sort of follow his rotation, and prevent him from completing the technique. Now I'm in perfect position to do my Tanitoshi, and simply dropping my hips, extending the leg out, and rotating. So I'm just going to do that slowly here, bang, and into mat work, transition. Okay, let me do it again. Let me do it from this side. Just this side. Okay. So, you can see. Yeah. Okay, so from here, again, I drop my hips lower than his. Okay, now I'm going to use my rotation, holding on to him, one body, extend my leg out, drop, come over for a mount. Comments? Okay, let's play with that a little bit. Okay, next technique. This is called cross knee pick. Some places you might find it as kushiki taoshi, but it's not really. At least other techniques are called that as well. We're going to follow along the. Now we've shifted from entering in this way on the inside of our opponent to moving to the outside. So we're going to follow along with that kind of general theme now. Now what we're going to do here is what we're going to do here is stepping this way. We're going to lean on our opponent. You can use a sleeve, hold on. Of course, this is one of the techniques that we're going to teach today that actually requires our opponent to have a garment to hold on. So from here, I'm going to, instead of shooting straight in, I'm going to come off at an angle. You can probably guess, some of you guys are nodding already, yeah, you know where I'm going to go with this. So I'm shooting off at an angle, diagonally behind my opponent rather than taking him back, kind of diagonally to his rear, putting all his weight on this leg at the same time as I insert this hand to capture this knee. Okay? So let's do this. Alright, so just sort of watch how this is going to go. So what I'm going to do from this angle, leaning into this as I perform my shoot, again, proper technique, dropping my level, bending at the knees, okay? Not bending too much at the waist. And now I'm going to go to execute the technique from here to here. Bang. Okay, drop. Notice that I've got the ankle lock just waiting. Right? Okay, one more time. Okay, subtleties here is I have to break my opponent's balance as I step in at the diagonal, loading all of his weight on that foot. That's what helps trap that knee in position. At the same time, this hand extends in to catch. Now, as you can see, I can almost make him fall just by pushing him, and I don't really have to pull that much. Of course, the technique is completed with a push-pull action, rotating the sphere. Here I'm grabbing the lapel. I can just as easily grab the elbow part of the jacket as I make my entry, which some senses might be more effective. You actually a little slightly different effect on your opponent's balance this way. Here, grabbing the lapel, grabbing the lapel, I feel stronger simply because I have a better grip here. Okay, the advantage grabbing here is you tend to neutralize that arm a little bit. Okay, so one more time. I'm here, I grab the lapel, grab the elbow, doesn't matter. Make my grab, I insert deep in and down. And again, I could be ready for the ankle lock. Comments? Okay, so guys have the crash pads around. Let's play with this.
Alright everyone, we're going to work on a single leg takedown. The mechanics are pretty much the same as the double leg. You have to change levels first and shoot in and keep your back straight. Square. But whereas with the double leg we were inserting in the middle. This time we'll pick leg if we're going to do it right side. We're going to come on the outside of his left leg.
So we're following the general theme of coming to the outside.
Yep. If we're doing it left side, some important points. Okay, now this, when I shoot in, I'm coming, if everyone can see my foot position, I'm standing to the side of him. Now, a few important points is how you grip your hands. Gripping like this with the thumb through between the index and the middle finger, and the hand that comes around, so I'm doing it right side with my right hand, gripping over top. This is the right way to do it, this is the wrong way to do it. The reason being that if I grip this way with my left hand over top, he can reach off and it's easier for him to pluck. And now, whereas I can still finish by gripping, it's just, that's a different technique. And we don't, if we can, well, that's more advanced, so if we can finish them off with one technique rather than flowing to more, it's better. Okay, so finish, the position is important. Pinch our knees together, keeping our legs bent. Our head is up, controlling him, so that if I wanted to break his balance just with my head, it's kind of in the middle of his chest. I can, just by leaning my head back. My back's bent at about a 45. I'm not bent over. My back is straight. If I'm bent over, you can push my head down, and if he sprawls out, absolutely nothing. I'm in a horrible position. So, now just go over the basic points, change levels, shoot in. The outside hand has to be facing palm up, grip with your thumb between your index and middle fingers, lift, head in between, and now the finish we're going to do is we're going to step back with our outside leg, pull his leg across us, and come across for the double. And finish in any way you like. We've already gone over that.
Okay, you want to do that just one more time? Just the entry and clearing the legs really so they can see it. You guys gather around.
Okay, so leg. so that I can lift. And here I can do anything with them.
Kind of scary up there. Okay, let's get busy. Okay, now I know you all had fun with that. So we're going to continue on that theme and incorporate this last technique on a single leg pick with the technique we did prior to this, which is the Taniyatoshi. So from here, okay, I perform my entry, I shoot in, and come around here, head up, squeezing the leg, all as Jimmy had mentioned before. Now, rather than clearing the leg and going on the inside, as he did, what we're going to do is clear the leg and go on the outside. And from here, I'm just simply going to do the Taniyatoshi valley drop, put this foot behind his heel, hop over a little bit back. Okay, this behind his heel, behind his, as I drop. Okay, then drop it over, cross. Do that again, and on the other side, just so they can see. The technique's a little different when you, okay, so from here I'm going to shoot in, bang, squeeze the leg, okay, hand over top, like you said. This clears the outside, sorry, behind the leg, and from here I'm going to drop carefully because I don't have a crash pad now. Here, boom. Now, I wouldn't stay in this position, I'd immediately come up for the side mount. Right, one more time. A little more fluidly. Okay, but slowly so you can see principles. Rather than shooting in, I'm coming around here, boom, up, grip, clear, down, and over. Comments? Okay, let's play with that a little bit. My name is James Overton. I'm sure most of you know that. This is my son, James, also James Overton Jr., Jimmy Overton. He'll be assisting me and probably teaching some of the techniques that we'll be demonstrating, and certainly going around helping you guys. Jimmy has an invaluable degree of experience in grappling competition, judo and wrestling and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So having him here is a great. But the main principles are the same. We drop our level. We try to minimize bending at the waist by dropping here, knees, and coming in. Okay, so back and forth. Once again, in, out, in, out, changing leads, in, out. Okay, so let's cut. Okay, good job everyone, good job. Now we're going to continue with the next part of this drill. You're actually going to be taking somebody down. Now when we're done filming, you can come up and use a crash pad here to get some people on that side. We also, as you can see, have a crash pad down there. So, and you actually, for this part, what we're going to do, you don't really need the crash pad, so you can use the matted areas. But later, you're definitely going to need them. So here, you've dropped down. Okay, your asset to our seminar, and certainly brings me a lot of pride. I'm wearing black. He's wearing white, just so things show up a little better on the tape, which will, as I stated in the seminar description, will be available to all of you for a nominal fee. Okay, so let's get started. The first series of techniques might surprise you, especially if you've had some. I know some of you have had some judo backgrounds. So it might surprise you as to one, going into these particular type of techniques, you're not going to see the actual turning and hip loading and throwing techniques until a little later. The reason for that is, despite the fact that we're wearing a gi, a lot of our techniques are geared towards grappling in general. So a lot of the techniques we're going to be teaching are going to be techniques that can be employed with a uniform, with a gi, with some kind of garment, as well as without garments. And right now, when I teach introductory grappling here in class, or whenever I taught it, one of the first techniques that I've taught has always been the double leg takedown. It's called in judo Overton-Guerra, or to mean double Gary meaning reap. Okay? But before we get to that, I want to start you guys off with some drills pertaining to the subtle technique of shoots. Okay? You see a lot of people, when they want to execute this technique or any kind of pickup technique, they bend at the waist and they charge forward. Okay, we're not going to do that here. We don't like that. All right. You'll see later when we do the counter to the double leg to the Overton-Guerra, you'll see why. When you actually bend at the waist, it's much easier to counter you than if you do it properly. So we're going to focus on the proper execution of a shoot. And that, I'm going to exaggerate the motion a little bit, because in the execution during a combat situation, it's a little bit more fluid. But I want you to focus on, first of all, my stance. Okay, the weight of my feet, the weight of my body are on the balls of my feet. Back heel is up. Okay, notice the back heel is up off the mat, because that's what's going to propel me forward. First thing I'm going to do is drop my level. Okay, so it's just like a fighting stance, but I drop my level, and from here I spring forward. I spring forward and I bring my back leg with me. I don't do this, because then I have no drive. Right? I need to bring my back leg with me so that I actually can engage it either in the combined motion of lifting as well as pushing my opponent forward. Part of the action, the rotation of the sphere. I'm going to talk a lot about spheres rotating here. Okay, so first of all, what you're going to do is, with your partners, you're going to start by dropping your level and just shooting forward and back. So switch, okay, back and forth, dropping, back here, drop, here. You notice how I'm inserting. Okay, there'll be other times when we're inserting on the outside.